Something that I focus a lot
Mm.
on in my work is perspective. Like, what perspective are you bringing to the challenge, or what perspective are you bringing to your career? What perspective are you bringing to your
Mm.
role as a coach or your role as an athlete? And perspective makes a really big difference
Yeah.
to experience, right? You would know this, of course, 'cause you teach, yeah,
Mhm.
mindful. It makes a
Yeah.
really big difference to our experience of a thing, and also how we perform. Um, so one of the most common challenges I think that athletes I work with have is the perspective they'll kind of default to unless somebody helps them or they go through something. Oftentimes the perspective they'll default to is like, I'm here to win this race. I'm here to get a PR. I'm here
Ah,
to
personal best. Yeah.
qualify for whatever, Yeah, like very outcome
Mm.
focused. You could say like an outcome focused intention or an outcome
Mm.
focused purpose for being in a space.
Mm.
And most of the time, an outcome focus, especially if it's an outcome focus that is on something not fully under their control, like where they're going to place or what time they're going to run or something like
Ah.
that, is it usually compromises. I would say compromises performance because
Mm.
if we set a target that's not fully under our control, and we or decide in advance to define our success based upon whether or not we reach that target, we basically introduce like the sense of something to lose into into a performance or into an effort. And
Mm.
in endurance sport, which I primarily work with distance runners, when you introduce the notion of something to lose into your performance, basically you invite fear into that space.
Ah.
And then when struggle arises inside of the effort, you're more likely to panic, more likely to give up, more likely to get tense, and the performance usually suffers. Um,
Mm.
so we do our best. I say we, like people, usually most people who work in sports psychology and also
Mhm.
like coaches who are very aware of the mental side of everything. We do our best to try to help athletes to be more process focused. So just focusing on like one chunk at a time to be more present, which is something that you, of course, would teach a lot. So we
Mhm.
try to help athletes be more process focused, be more present, and just focus on what they're going to do.
Mm.
And when they're able to do that, then their sense of of something to lose is greatly reduced, and their state inside of a effort is usually more resilient because they're not
Mm.
looking for likelihood or proof that they're going to fail partway through the effort. So they're able to stay
Right.
like more present and usually perform better. So anyway, that was like a little
Mm.
bit of a side tangent on the whole notion of how we're going to see. But yeah, if we're able to choose a process based perspective for inside of a
Mm.
race, um, that helps an athlete state within the race. Um, and even I'll often take it back even a little bit more big picture than that. So,
Mhm.
oftentimes I'll talk with an athlete about deciding how they want to relate to the race or how they want to relate to
Mm.
a racing space. And so, an example of that would be one that's coming to my mind right now is a professional runner who decided he wanted his relationship with the race to be like just grateful and grateful for the opportunity,
Oh,
and proud of himself for attaining his goal, to be a professional.
that's a great perspective to enter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so we'll actively work on that because that
Mm.
athlete can also slip into a perspective of, "I have to run under 3:35 for the 1,500 meters, or people don't care about me and I failed at my dreams,"
Yeah.
like, 'cause like us humans, our perspective co we're so vulnerable to unhelpful perspectives too, right? When like
Yeah.
fear comes along. So how do you want to see basically refers to our perspective. Our perspective, it could be our
Mm.
perspective on why we're doing sport. It could be our perspective on the purpose of a certain race. It's basically those things. It's basically those things
Mm.
like why we're doing sport and the perspective on on a certain race. It could be your perspective on the role your training partners play in your running. Like, some people see their training partners as like just wonderful companions who push them to be their best. Other people see their training partners as a threat because they're worried about their training partners performing better than them. So
Yeah.
it's really all about perspectives. How are we going to see is can be a pretty broad question depending on who it is you're talking to.
Yeah. What you're naming, and you mentioned mindfulness as well. So you're right. I teach mindfulness based stress reduction and BSR. And one of the sessions we do in that is about perception.
Mm,
and how it's not as much as the stressor because it's happening already, but how we see or don't see the stressor that impacts experience.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, what is the lens that we're taking on? And this is not just a sports. This could be someone wanting to start an exercise practice regime, and they're like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym, or I'm not comfortable going to the gym. It's like, oh, so what's another perception to hold around that,
totally.
right?
Yep. It's
Or
100% the same thing.
yeah, so how can we change the perception to influence experience?
Yes. Yes,
Right.
which then influences performance.
Yes. So, as you're saying this, there's a big component that I've been so excited about just in the last decade is in sports psychology, the mental component, like the
Mm,
mental health, the knowing what's happening internally. It's like we're not just machines and trying to perform and you move some gadgets and it's, not just strategies to get better physically, but mentally. And
mhm.
that influences getting better. This is even if someone's not an athlete who wants to start a walking exercise or if they want to do something like this is for everyone, really. Like the
Yeah.
mental component either blocks us, brings us down, or elevates us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Hello there, and thank you so much for stopping by this channel. I hope you find this content useful, and if you do, feel free to hit that subscribe button. It will really help me to reach to more people and keep this content going. Here we are journeying together, and let's see where this takes us.